Hey, what's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today I'm excited to rank the discography of my favorite metalcore band of all time, Poison the Well. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alright, these guys definitely bring the nostalgia vibes for me, and were a huge entryway into metalcore and then just metal in general. I have to credit them a lot, really. And let's start with the beginning with The Opposite of December from 1999. Landmark album for metalcore, very important. I'm amazed with how many people aren't like big Poison the Well fans, or when people start talking about like the big four of metalcore or the best metalcore bands, I often will not see their name brought up unless like I do. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, totally. But they tend to get overshadowed, which is strange to me. But this is a great album, and especially for like the time and just their first like real studio album, it's pretty incredible stuff. I love this intro. That drum part, is so cool. Just like kicking things off on a high note from the very beginning. I love artist rendering of me too, in terms of highlights on here. Tons of just great riffs, memorable sing-along vocals. I mean, it is a little bit dated, especially some of the more kind of like spoken word stuff. But for the time, like it's that's what it is. Like it's just a relic of its time, but it still holds up at the same time, I feel like. For me anyways, maybe it's those nostalgia vibes. But listen to that. And they already had kind of those dynamics from the beginning. Of course, there's the classic Too Nerdy. Classic riff. Common favorite at their shows, often a closer. Love this song still to this day so much. To Mandate Heaven's another great one. This guitar just sounds like a tornado. And I love just the like raw, classic era metalcore snarls. You know, this is before gent kind of took over the genre. And I miss this sound. Like, I'm really excited to hear kind of more bands coming back in this style. But, yeah, My Mirror No Longer Reflects, too. It is so good. I freaking love that with the riff and the drums. But yeah, enough of that one. This is a high-ranking album for a lot of different reasons. It's quality, it's consistent, and again, it's a landmark thing. I'm not going to quite put it at S because I want to save that slot for another album that I think is even better, but I'm going to put it at A tier, and we will move on to Tear from the Red, or Tear from the Red. Solid album, solid follow-up, brings a lot of the same elements from the last album. Botchla, great song, one of their like top 10 songs of all time with this cool little intro. Where is it? This will never happen. And then, but I adore. Many a year in high school singing along to that part. Legendary stuff, really great. One of the few music videos that they actually have, especially from these earlier albums. I think it's the only album from, or only music video from the early albums. Sticks and Stones Never Made Sense. It's another solid one. Cool riff. I feel like this is alluding to kind of the style we get on the next album. Very cool. There's other good songs on here too. Turn Down Elliot's pretty solid. And then we've got this weird interlude too from Apocalypse Now. If you're ever wondering what this sample is from. Overall, though, it's kind of like an inconsistent album. It doesn't have as many like high points for me as really any of their other albums. So for me, this is my least favorite album. But as you can see, like, I adjusted the ratings on here just because I don't think that they have a bad album. I would rank this still as a solid B album and leave it at that. But let's move on to my personal favorite, You Come Before You, an album I have talked about a lot on the site in various forums and lists, and I think I did a written review of it at one point. This is, for my money, maybe the best metalcore album of all time. It's at least in the top 5. Ghost Chant, that opening. Another great opening. Suffer! Just love that. And everything on this album was like stepped up. The production is stronger. You can tell that they really worked on like making the vocals deeper and more intense. I remember I was completely blown away when I picked up this album on release day at just how improved they were. The songwriting is way more dynamic. You've got a lot more cool stuff going on. They started throwing in some interesting instrumentation. I actually have an interview on the podcast with the drummer, Chris Hornbrook, that if you want to get a little bit more like insight and background into some of their albums, especially the later ones and the changes they went through, he goes in on that, and that was really fun to do. Like, that was kind of like a starstruck moment. For A Bandaged Iris, another one of my personal favorites on. The drumming on here, man, Chris just killed it. So cool. With some of the textures, like, not only are there memorable hooks, but just his drum patterns, like, manage to really stand out. You hear him and you kind of, like, know it's him. Zombies are good for your health. Nice D beat on this one, too. Crystal Lake, excellent closer. Another great D beat on this one. Oh, wait, I missed the transition. I love that tapped riff. It's just so heavy. And then even the deeper cuts that aren't necessarily like my standout tracks. Beating again for the first time. You've got these big, like, almost kind of Deftones-y, post-metal-y kind of moments on here. With the big builds into the heavier parts. View from Here is a Brick Wall, too. Has a nice long build into the pounding drums. This is one of those albums that I constantly carry every track with me, no matter what. Like, no matter what's in my playlist. Apathy is a Cold Body is a great one, too. Yeah, I could gush on and on and on about the merits of this album. It's S tier, for sure. Easily their best album, if you ask me. Let's go on to Versions, which came out in 2007. And yeah, nice gap between those albums, too. A good 4-year gap here. And I remember when this album first came out, and I even told Chris this, like, I was kind of disappointed in it. I did not like it, in fact. For a long time, I kind of put it off. And partially because, like, the songwriting was a little different, the instrumentation and production were different, and it was a little bit more experimental and kind of, like, a lot of indie flourishes on it, I would even say. But it's grown on me a lot. I've come to really appreciate it for what it is. It's a very different sounding album, and it has some really solid tracks, like this one, Letter Thing, which was the lead single. And there's so many like great vocal moments on here that stand out that I kind of missed on early listens that I just didn't fully appreciate. But yeah, Letter Thing, very fun, intense track. And then there's this cool slide guitar part. Nagina, however you want to pronounce that, has this really cool kind of like spaghetti westerny almost sounding builds. Again, this weirded me out at first. Like, I wanted just more pure balls to the wall metalcore, and they wanted to do something different, and I just appreciate that so much more now than I did before. And then it builds up into a great transition later on. This whole thing about, I am a snake, I let my children go. The notches that create your headboard. This has become one of my favorites over time. Great, another great riff, more great D beats. Chris just killing it as usual. And this riff right here, the guitar is just awesome stuff going on there. And then yeah, you get into some of the deeper cuts on here too. Still really good stuff. Naive Monarch, too. So yeah, this one was definitely a grower, and I appreciate it a lot more now. It's still not one of my favorites to re-listen to, and ultimately I put it at kind of a B+. I struggle with that though, because I kind of want to give them the extra points for innovation. So, you could argue putting it at A- as well. But if we're kind of going by like, what are my favorite albums to re-listen to? I'm going to move on to the Tropic Rot. And I feel like the Tropic Rot struck a better balance for me of some of that experimentation they did with versions, but then also the approach that I loved about You Come Before You, and really cycled back around. And I remember being really bummed though that this was their final album, because again, like, this had been my album, pretty much my band from pretty much the beginning. Exist Underground is a great starter. I noticed too that this is a great running album. Something about the beats and the pacing on here, just every time I run with some of these tracks, like especially like Cinema, it's partially the D beats again, but this album in particular, for some reason, I will run so much better and so much more efficiently when I listen to these albums. But yeah, Cinema, top 10 track of theirs probably. I love this tremolo. So good. Antarctica Inside Me is another great one. Another one that has a nice little build here at the beginning with the drum roll and this like tension building vocal parts, and then we kick back into the D beats, building into this big epic chorus. Like, these guys just don't, I feel like they don't get enough respect for how great songwriters they are. Like, just fantastic stuff. It's easy to kind of like miss it potentially. Makeshift Play You, this bass riff at the beginning, opening up into this start-stop riff here. Excellent, man. I love this album. And it's like, I've learned over the years, like, I already liked this album when it came out, but it's one that, like, even to this day, every time I listen to it, I like it more. Another cool bass part on Pamplemousse. Like, I feel like this is a band that probably would have gone a very similar direction to Deftones if they were still making music now. Yeah, you've got this cool little acoustic part here on this one too. So yeah, overall, I'm still feeling pretty good about my ratings here, because I'm going to put this one at A-, because those are kind of my top 3. And, again, like I said, they have no bad albums. So even a B for them is like higher in my book than like a lot of other metalcore bands might be like an A for their discography. But yeah, those are my rankings for Poison the Well, and I'm really curious to hear in the comments, where are the Poison the Well fans out? What's your favorite album? And also, if you're new to this band, if you're not really familiar, or at least like you know them but you've never really listened to them, I want to hear about that too. I'm interested. And please, if you're one of those people, go out and check out these albums, because they are essential, if you ask me. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.